Dearest Hector, there is nothing like a mini cruise to get the taste buds going. And after a particularly agreeable plate of grilled sardinas and a real salad for once, it's time to set foot on the island of Mallorca. Now, I know you've been here before and you love it, but to me it's always been synonymous with gold medallions and Gucci shoes. However, in my new guise as a culinary detective, I intend to discover the real roots of Mallorcan cuisine. And anyway, I'll keep you posted. So, Palma. People from the east came here, the Greeks, the Moors from the African coast, the Phoenicians, the Romans. They've all, in some way, left their mark. But to Senor Floyd, ace gastronomic detective, licensed to cook, the way to understand the history of a country is through its food. My search began when I was invited to a party. I don't care for parties as a rule. For some strange reason, they make me want to panic and rush to the nearest bar. However, in my quest to find the authentic taste of Mallorca, I was kindly invited to this one. They did say, I'm sure they said, you'll find the true flavour of Mallorca here. I'm sure.
I don't. I'm a figment of yours and my imagination. Absolutely. Well.
There's a boy, a little boy, shooting arrows.
With Leapy Lee playing in the background, this, I've been repeatedly told, is a classless society, where the only membership requirement is a few bob in the bank and an appetite for enjoying oneself, a liking of the odd glass or three, and a political persuasion that is a healthy shade of blue. The only thing Mallorcan about the evening was the warm, scented air.
Little arrows.
Nobody here seems deeply into food, and I must say that the prospect of finding a truly Mallorcan plate of food here is as remote as listening to an authentic piece of Balearic folk music.
Clothing, little arrows in your
But the buffet looked attractive. There were lots of healthy salads, coleslaw and smoked salmon, the usual things you'd expect to find in Golders Green or San Francisco, but nothing stood out as truly Mallorcan. So I asked Chef Donald what the true Mallorcan cuisine was all about.
Lots of their dishes are all done on bread. Ham and cheese and garlic and onions. That's what you would get as a first course of some sort. If you went to a Mallorquin home, they'd give you some sort of pan bolis, either with cheese and olives and onions and garlic, and then it would be followed with either a suckling pig or a piece of pork wrapped up in cabbage, or the shellfish again, which has a lot of influence.
Chef, Keith, have a good time.
I will.
We're here to have a good time.
And that is the essence
Of life.
That is the essence of life, isn't it?
Aloysius said that to me constantly, and now Keith Floyd is following.
They were a brilliantly friendly bunch, but my gastronomic quest was going nowhere. I declined the offer of another plateful of ham and pineapple and cold roast beef with horseradish sauce, and turned in early in readiness for tomorrow's search. Before I can paint a culinary picture of a place, I need to wander around using my nose to smell the delicate aromas and robust smells from Mallorca's kitchens, using my eyes to find those little telltale signs that say we cook Mallorcan cuisine and we're proud of it. Ah, what's this? Perro caliente. Perro means dog and caliente means hot. Dog hot. Interesting.
No, it's not a paella. No, it's not a jambalaya. It is an Arros Brut. It is the signature classic dish of Mallorca. It is a broth of rice, of rabbit, of chicken, vegetables, and offal. It is a fabulously exquisite, authentic, traditional dish which, after 2 hours of padding round like shoestring around the derelict, desolate streets of Palma, we have actually found a real restaurant that serves real Mallorcan food. I've eaten, Clive's eaten, the gang have all eaten. I had a roast leg of lamb and all the rest of it. I'm so excited about this place that I'm going to try to do my next cooking sketch in their kitchen. They don't know this yet, but I'm going to go and ask them, because I reckon that we spent enough money, they might let us in. And I've also had a few glasses of wine, which is most unusual for me, but we have had lunch. Back on that, I'm going to go and chat up the management. Hello.
Hello, how do you go?
Very good.
Very good.
Very good. Excellent. Can I speak to the head chef? That lady there. Go on, we were doing things. Senora.
Now, I've never actually done this before. I've always wanted to, but I've always been a bit shy. Sometimes I get dragged into kitchens that don't remotely interest me. But these kind people were a bit bemused at first and then welcomed me with open arms. Even though I don't speak the language, but food and its appreciation opens any door. This is one of David, the director, telling a little white lie on how long we'll be taking over their kitchen. Notice the fluent Spanish, by the way.
Arros Brut.
Okay? We've cracked it. We've actually got into a real Mallorcan kitchen where they sell splendid food. I don't speak Spanish. I don't even know how to cook the stuff, but we're going to do it. We have actually won. Come on, Clive, back to our drinks.
This is the sort of place where I could willingly spend the whole afternoon in my new guise as a culinary detective, watching for all those telltale signs that distinguish the genuine from the bogus.
No further ado, Clive, a quick spin round the ingredients, starting from here. We have 4 different kinds of meat. We've got rabbit, we've got quail, we've got pork, and we've got chicken. Then we have green peppers. We have a mixture of fresh vegetables, in this case peas, beans, butter beans, red peppers and mushrooms, but you can use any kind of vegetable you like. We have the ever-present tomato and onion, we have snails, and we have rice. Okay, right. Whack into the pot, into one of these lovely little earthenware pots, and the very first thing we do is put our meat in. Like so.
When these are browned, it only takes 2 or 3 minutes. Then I add the onions and tomatoes with a little seasoning.
Muy brilliante. Okay, now, that sizzles away for a little bit. Isn't this fun? This is really good fun, you know. Right, in with the green peppers, finely chopped. Incidentally, one of the interesting things about all the food we're eating here is its absolute freshness. I think he just waved at me, pushed my hair out of the way. But the green peppers here taste sweet because they haven't come from under cloches of plastic in some northern country. They've been grown in rich, fertile earth under the hot sun, which makes them taste so delicious. Right, next stage then is the verduras. Verduras, okay. The verduras goes in next, and verduras is vegetables, okay. And just to remind you, we've got peas, beans, red peppers, and wild mushrooms. Right. Then, now, you appreciate that we're doing this at a speed to end up with a dish so that we can get onto the beach and have the afternoon off, okay? So I'm not letting every stage cook right the way through because you will see through the clever way of editing the actual finished dish. Anyway, right, in go the snails, los caracoles, okay?
Now, once all the ingredients are in the pot, you need to add a couple of ladles of chicken stock or rabbit stock, just to let the whole thing bubble up in, because you've got to put the rice in as well in a minute, don't forget.
Mas. Okay? Okay. And then, finally, the arroz, which as we know in any language is rice.
Use carefully washed rice so it doesn't make the sauce starchy, and boil for about 20 minutes.
Right. Clive, come back, please, because there's one thing I forgot. Something very important to Spanish cooking is the last moment of flavouring. And this is garlic and parsley, finely chopped, which at the last minute you sprinkle a little bit into your dish to give it that fine flavour. Right, okay. Now, Arroz Brut to Isabella's recipe, but cooked by me. Señora.
Gracias.
De nada.
Bueno,
¿Es bueno o malo?
muy bueno. Tiene buena pinta.
Dígame la verdad.
Tiene buena pinta.
Good color, good tinta. Señor?
Muy bueno, señor Floyd.
¿Sí?
Muy bueno, ¿eh?
I woke early in the morning, with a slight head I might add, in order to catch the little train that goes from the capital, Palma, to the little town of Solia in the mountains. There's nothing like a train journey to give one a true appreciation for the flavour of the land, through almond trees and vineyards and olive groves. And the little train said, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. Clive was really happy filming the countryside, but as an ardent train spotter, he was doubly chuffed. You should see his anorak, it's covered in badges. This must be one of the happiest little trains in the whole of Spain. The engine's name is Julio, and he's been huffing and puffing up and down this narrow-gauge track for nearly 150 years, man and boy, or as they say here, hombre y muchacho. By the time the little train arrived, I was famished, and it was still early and time to enjoy a true Mallorcan breakfast. Great journey, great station, great train, and a typically great Mallorcan breakfast. You see, I gave them a phone on the portable dog and bone when I was chugging up the mountainside, said, could you lay on a little snack for me? Well, they took me at my word. What did they give me? They gave me the Mallorcan 11s. It's the Spaniards who start work very early in the morning, don't have time for breakfast, so around about 11 o'clock, and it is actually 5 to 11, they stop for this. Have a spin round, Clive. They have some things called cocas, which is a kind of a Mallorcan pizza, although it's not a pizza at all because it's not a dough pastry. It's an ordinary short crust pastry, covered in this case with blet or chard and tomato, olive oil and baked in the oven. Then they have a bit of bread with some sobrasada, which is a very important local sausage of pork and paprika. In the winter that would be served hot, toasted if you like. Then they have a few chilies or peppers, green peppers, spicy green peppers and olives. Another kind of coca. This one's got red peppers, tomatoes, onions, parsley and garlic in it. Then they'd also probably have either little mountain ham or some cooked ham with tomato. The bread underneath has been covered in olive oil, very important thing, and munched down with the odd green pepper. And of course, they might have a glass of lemon juice or orange juice because this region produces stacks of it. But myself, I prefer a little rosado. Gastronomic sleuthing is fun, and working on my policy of having high friends in low places, I spent the previous evening researching in bars.
So after I'd had one or two, it was a great bar, and the barman seemed to know a great deal about it. He said, go and find the city of the lost Incas. I thought, my name's not Conan Doyle, it's Floyd, you know. Anyway, so I got the maps out. I eventually found not the city of the lost Incas, but Inca, a little town slap bang in the middle of Robert Graves' preferred island, where he said anyway, you will find a genuinely authentic Mallorcan restaurant where they serve the business. So this is what I think I'm finding.
In fact, the trail led to a dusty, sleepy town where the recommended restaurant, the Cellar Canamar, was built in an old bodega or wine cellar where Senora Antonio practiced her time-honoured craft, the preparation of traditional Mallorcan dishes, one of the classics being Sopa de Mallorca. It's made by adding celery, onions, peppers, cabbage, leeks, parsley. In fact, a cornucopia of fresh vegetables stewed in olive oil that's been flavoured with garlic and pimentos. Originally, it was a peasant dish, and so to make it more bulky and go further, they would half fill the serving bowls with the stew, then add stale bread, sprinkle that with olive oil, then add more vegetable stew, and pop it back in the oven for another 10 minutes or so. So, when is a soup not a soup? When it's a Sopa de Mallorca. Quite delicious. I could tuck into a bowl of that right now. And so the plot thickens. We've been travelling over mountains by tram, by train, by car, down the valleys, along the beaches, but now by punt into the salt marshes. Everyone has told me that this shallow lake in the north of the island is important to Mallorcan cuisine. Not because it makes me look a bit like Humphrey Bogart in The African Queen, but because here the locals trap eels and keep them alive in these special baskets. And here the eel is regarded as a great delicacy. They tell me that you never find them in any restaurants, but they celebrate them like nobody's business.
Right. It's very important with these wood stoves to get the right mark. You see, that's flaming away there, so you need wood mark 2. You lift the casserole slightly to one side. In my travels around Mallorca, I have met a lot of people who've said, this is a very typical dish, this is a very typical dish. I don't always believe them. And when they told me that here, eels were the business, I thought, is that really true? Because you know how sort of interested parties sometimes try to steer you towards a particular thing for their own benefit. So I was a bit suspicious. But in fact, eels here, caught from here, are the most phenomenally popular dish in the region. In fact, in January each year, they have a week-long eel festival. They like them so much. Anyway, that's enough history and information and suspicions and things like that. Clive, have a little look around my ingredients here. First of all, of course, we have the eels, just chopped into bite-sized pieces. Okay, they're fried with a sauce made of green peppers, onions, leeks, and finally tomatoes. Now there's some more refined bits that go into it, but I can more easily show you that actually in the pot. So, first of all, I need to crush a little bit of garlic, just very roughly with your hands. There's nothing fine about this, nothing refined about this kind of cooking. And you need a dried chili, but not too much of it, because otherwise it'll burn the roof of your mouth off, and a bit of fresh green chili, okay, load of garlic. And the very first thing we do to flavour the oil is pop all of that into the pot. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Right. Now, this is a difficult one to shoot because of the wind, because of the fire. I've had to got my table of ingredients at a safe distance away from both your legs, Clive, and my rather expensive trousers, okay? So, next thing, we flour the eels. Like so. Nicely floured. And we pop them into the oil. Season with a bay leaf and a quick stir round. Is it worth giving one of your best ones on that, Clive? They look absolutely splendid sizzling in the very hot, brilliant olive oil. Thank you. Stay there for a second, please, just a second. Right, now they come out. And I put to one side for a moment or two. Now it's very important that all this garlic and the bay leaves and the chilies are in here because the eels have taken all the flavour from those spices and herbs and from the olive oil. So they'll have a very distinct flavour even though they're going into a sauce. Right. One side. Now there's a slightly boring bit. It's very boring. You can either watch this or not as you wish, but you in fact have to throw this oil away. And you do that very ecologically by walking behind the camera while you gaze at the mountains. And you replace that there, and using a highly typical Mallorcan oil pourer, you put in a load more oil.
While the oil heats up in my earthenware pot, back at the eel hunter's sacred headquarters, the senora is preparing a lovely fresh Mallorcan salad called trumpo, while her husband's busily peeling the beans. Trumpo is made with freshly cooked tuna, you could use tinned, finely chopped peppers, red and green, onions and tomatoes, and wine vinegar and salt and pepper seasoning. It's fantastic for a light lunch on a hot day. Anyway, the eel hunters spend every Saturday afternoon here and enjoy light, healthy lunches. Ho, ho, ho.
Now, my sauce is virtually ready. Let me just recap on that, if I may, because it is the essence of Spanish cooking to sweat your onions and your leeks, the basic things you use to make sauces, till all the liquid has gone out of them and the flavour remains. So, first of all, olive oil, finely chopped onions, finely chopped green peppers, finely chopped leeks. Similar way in olive oil, lots of fresh, finely chopped tomato, a little bit of red chili, salt and pepper, and cook for, well, that's been about 50 minutes actually. Then you have this unctuous, rich sauce full of flavour. It really is good. Then you remember the fried eels which we had? They were quickly fried in olive oil flavoured with the bay leaf and garlic. They just go into there and simmer away for just a few minutes so that they now get the extra flavour of the tomato sauce. Anyway, I reckon it's a pretty good dish. Seems okay to me. That is what I think is, for this part of Mallorca, on a plate.
These men enjoy their own company, they love fishing and hunting, but there's no point at all in doing these things if you don't like eating. I was supposed to have served lunch at 2, now it's going on for 4, and everyone's getting a little relaxed, or as they say here, tranquilo.
I'm probably going to poison you.
Very well. Very well. Very well.
You get there?
Fantastic.
Let's see. I've no idea whether this is any good or not. I've never cooked it before in my life. I am, I'm afraid. Juan. Sí, sí. Clive, if I can just interrupt you for a minute. I mean, I must tell the people who watch this programme, all 6 of them, that you have no idea the agony I go through doing this kind of thing. I've never seen this dish before in my life, never tasted it before in my life, and to cook it for a bunch of guys who every Saturday, and they have done so for the last 11 years, come to this lovely shooting lodge and pretend to eat. They pretend to fish and they pretend to shoot. Then they cook themselves a meal because they're all very fond of food, and then they settle down to emptying barrel after barrel of wine.
Harping back to the gastronomic detective theme, if I hadn't asked the right questions at a nearby bar, then I wouldn't be here. Searching for authentic cuisine unlocks many doors and makes you lots of new chums. Anyway, what do my latest chums think of this dish, I wonder?
Miguel, dígame, la verdad, ¿es malo o bueno?
Muy buenas, están riquísimas, muy bien cocinadas, en su punto. La salsa está fantástico, tiene su poquito de picante, que es lo mejor. Te han salido fenomenal. Mereces un aplauso.
Thank you.
They honestly liked it. They sucked the bones clean. They had the odd glass and invited me to stay and become an honorary member of their hunting, shooting and eel-catching club. There was a tearful goodbye before I set off to discover more of the island and find inspiration for my next cooking sketch.
It's quite stunning, isn't it? Fabulous mountains, ancient olive trees, the azure sky, and the cobalt blue sea. It's no wonder that people like Chopin got hooked on the place, and Robert Graves, after the horrors of the First World War, came here to live and wrote those wonderful poems. And I can share in some of that, you know, because although I'm only a cook, to get some kind of feel of the place, I'd like to take a drive along this mountainous coastal road to find a little spot, some shady nook, to cook a classic Mallorcan dish called fritas, which is a thing of lamb's liver and peppers and garlic and potatoes. And what could be better, under the shade of an ancient, almost biblical olive tree, than to cook a classic dish, to paint a simple picture of food here on this wonderful island.
Incidentally, throughout this trip, we've been bickering about different kinds of cars, 4-track, sports cars, turbos and everything, but quite frankly, it's only a hired car that can go absolutely anywhere. Anyway, now the dust has settled, the classic Mallorcan fritas.
First of all, we pop our liver in. 2 bits of peppers. That. Let that sizzle and fry. Now, have a good look at that. Clive, a nice big fat, one of your fattest, one of your finest, one of your most handsome, full-bodied close-ups. And then back to me, because I have a little explaining to do. Now, the essence of Spanish cooking is that every part of a composed dish is cooked separately and then amalgamated together at the end. Now, if you happen to have a 6-burner stove, the best way to cook this would be have 6 little frying pans, 1 for the peppers, 1 for the onions, 1 for the liver, and 1 for the garlic, and so on and so forth. Then when they're all cooked, combine them together in a last little bit of olive oil. But we haven't got 6 burners up here, so I'm doing it all in 1 pot. It will still have the desired effect of succulent pieces of lamb's liver, beautiful vegetables, and of course nothing goes without a few fresh Mallorcan herbs, a bit of thyme, pop a bit of that in, a little bit of fennel, like so. And even, because you can add, you know, this is a make-it-up-as-you-go-along dish. As long as you've got the liver or the pig's fry, you can add any kind of vegetable you like. It doesn't have to be peppers, but there's one thing that must go into it are some fried potatoes. There we are. Now, we'll say by the magic of television that about 15 minutes have passed, which they have, just like that, you see, 15 minutes have gone by, and you have a typical Mallorcan dish. In a typical Mallorcan bowl called fritas Mallorcan. And if it's all right with you, Clive, I've had a very hard day. I'm going to swivel round. Would it be any nuisance to you if I swivel down and sit on that rock over there and enjoy myself? And we could perhaps gaze at the sea or go into one of those little sketches where I think about things and later on back in the dubbing theatre write a witty commentary or a profound commentary, maybe gazing out over the sea and wondering, I wonder if Robert Graves sat here and mused. Did Chopin sit here and compose something? Perhaps they came up for a picnic and perhaps they had a Mallorcan fritas.
I was browsing through the boys' bumper book of the Balearics and came across this fascinating nugget of information. These islands used to be governed by Carthage and then by Rome, before they became an independent kingdom in the 13th century. And the natives here had a great reputation as slingers in the Roman army, I suppose because there were lots of stones around. Anyway, as the oldest slinger in town, I'm going to paint my own culinary impression of Mallorca, because I'm fed up with being a detective and I want to be a painter and a historian instead.
The most popular fish in Spain is hake. I love it. I love garlic. I love onions. I love tomatoes. I love olive oil. And I like brandy. And I sometimes like to get a bit of time on my own and have a bit of space, a bit of freedom. So I'm cooking very simply, Clive. Come over here if you would. Some onions and some tomatoes and some garlic, chopped up very finely into the pot with olive oil, simmering away. So you've got a nice, rich base of tomato sauce. And then a couple of fillets of absolutely fresh hake and some mussels. All I want to do is pop the hake into there like so, a bit there. Then rub those over with some saffron, because saffron is a very Spanish Moorishy kind of thing, goes well with fish, and also paints a lovely picture of colours. Then whack the gas up to maximum. Stand back a bit in case I set fire to you, Clive. I don't want to do that. We've been thinking, oh, there we are, it's coming. Simmer away for a second. What a wonderful shot, isn't it? Really pretty round here. And into that we'll add our tomatoes, and these aren't tomatoes, they're mussels. They go in there like that. A little drop of white wine. So, there. Now that simmers away for about 15 or 20 minutes until all the juices have permeated with the fish. But I was thinking there was some frightfully clever chap, I don't know who it was, a Frenchman, Jean-Paul Sartre or something, who said, when you visit a strange country, the only way to find out about it is to eat its food. Eat the country and you'll understand it. Well, I think this dish sums up that attitude very carefully with its hake, the mussels, the brandy, the tomatoes, the onions, the garlic, the olive oil. All the colours and the flavours of Mallorca are in that pot.